So, a very good morning, good evening, good afternoon to you, wherever you might be in the world. I hope that you are having a wonderful day. If you're new to the channel, I say welcome to you. Thanks for joining me. If you're a returning visitor, I say thank you very much for being part of my journey and for actually coming back and hopefully be actively involved. I would like to ask you, leave a comment, please, below the video, letting me know where you're from. Say g'day to me. If you can't tell by my accent, I am Australian and I live in Perth, Western Australia. So before I get into the topic today, which is chrysoprase, I'll just have a brief moan. As in, I have been so busy. Technology has been a nightmare today. I'm upgrading because it's just been so difficult. So I'm hoping that the quality will actually be there for you guys and that it will add value to you. Anyway, problems should be resolved as far as the technology goes. Hopefully, they told me within 3 to 5 days, and it's because it's so slow. So yeah, I'm changing whatever. Anyway, I'm dealing with that. Now, in the meantime, of course, here in Perth, I'm looking at 39 degrees Celsius today. So it is going to be a scorcher. I hope wherever you are in the world that the weather is actually quite pleasant. But anyway, enough of me whinging, complaining, and jabber-jawing. Let's get into talking about chrysoprase because it really genuinely is one of my favorites. And I've actually been very blessed to own a really large slab. When I say really large, probably about 1 kilo of it, that I was given by a prospector many years ago. So I'm quite familiar with really good quality chrysoprase. And so that's going to shape a lot of the conversation here today. So when it comes to chrysoprase, I actually picked this image because I thought it's a really good portrayal. It's an absolutely amazing little sculpture, and the artist that has created it has been very canny in the way that they've done it. So in its natural form, and we'll be talking about the mineral content in a little while, the chrysoprase is actually this streak of green in between the two layers. It's like a little green sandwich, if you like, between rocks. And what the artist has done, or the sculptor here, is actually sliced one of the brown bits off and then carved the frog shape out of the green bit that's remaining there. But the green frog is not attached to that brown piece of rock as in glued on. That is actually its host rock. That is part of its natural formation. So it's a very, very clever little piece. Now, so the backstory with how I came across it is I was living in Western Australia. I still am. I've travelled around a bit, but I was in Western Australia in a little area called the Goldfields, which is called the Goldfields because obviously gold is the major resource that they mine out. But it's got a lot of other mineral deposits. And at the time I was there, I'd never heard of chrysoprase. And fortunately for me, I went into an office and there was a bloke who I didn't know from Adam, actually, and he had all these beautiful green sandwiches, I call them, across his desk in big sizes, and there was one tiny little piece. And me being who I am, because I'm absolutely besotted with crystals, I just love colourful crystals, I've actually said to the guy, because there was a tiny little piece, maybe about 1 inch wide or whatever, 1 inch square, and I said to him, look, I don't mean to be rude. I said, I don't know you from a bar of soap. These are very Australian colloquialisms, I think. I said, but, the bottom line is, I said, I am a collector of crystals, I said, and I am just besotted by them. And I said, and I've never seen a crystal like this. I said, it's beautiful. I said, you've got so many of them here. Would you mind terribly if I took this tiny little piece with me? Well, of course, the first thing, the Goldfields is such a wonderful place for meeting characters, okay? They don't tolerate and suffer fools. Everybody's pretty direct. The prospectors are out there in the environment a lot, and so they're pretty hardcore, and they're really what people would call ockers. Anyway, this guy has given me the squinty look, sussing me out, we call it. So he sussed me out and he's gone, oh, so you collect them, do you? First of all, he looks a bit skeptical. He said, so you've never seen this before? I said, never. I said, I honestly never have. I said, but it is so beautiful. And he said, that being the case, he said, I don't think you need to take that tacky little bit. He said, I've got some more out the back. He said, have you been out the back? And I said, no, I haven't. Why would I go out the back? So he turned around and said, oh, you need to come out the back. If you like crystals, you need to go outside with me. And what happened is there was a car park with a shelter under it, and he had a number of 44-gallon drums. And inside of these drums, he had them jam-packed with chrysoprase, right? And what he was doing, he was actually soaking them and washing them. And I was like, oh my God, it was like a lolly in a lolly shop. So I'm obviously I can't fit in a 44-gallon drum if I'm trying to lean over the top of it, but I was certainly giving my best top. I was in there like a child in a lolly shop looking at all these crystals, not planning to take them home. Then unbeknownst to me, this guy is pulling lumps, I'm talking major slabs, out of these drums, and he's putting them into my arms. He goes, do you like this bit? Do you like this bit? Do you like this bit? And I'm like, oh, yes, that one's beautiful, as you do. Oh, looking at the colour and all the rest of it. And then he goes, I said, oh, well, look, I said, I can't hold you up all day because he's at work. And I said, why don't I just take this little bit here if that's all right? Thank you very much. And he turns around and he goes, oh, you don't want to take that one with you. He said, that's because he's Australian, that's a piece of poo, he said very politely to me. He said, why don't you take this bit? And he actually put about, I had about 5 big rocks in my arms. And I was like, oh, what a lucky day. I said, why have you got so much of this? He goes, oh, I've got a mine. He said, I mine chrysoprase. And I was like, you have a mine? I thought, well, I feel no guilt. I just released guilt over taking back these big 5 rocks that he's giving me. And then he said, yeah. He said, this is... Then he started to open up is where I'm going. It's when you start talking and people can see you're sincere and you're not trying to take advantage. Anyway, he said to me, yeah, he said, you would be surprised. He said, this stuff has got so expensive. He said, it's actually retailing for more than what gold does. And we're going back about 25 years here. And he said, I think he was getting about $2,000 an ounce for chrysoprase back in the day. Well, I can tell you at that point, because I don't like to take advantage of people, whatever. Anyway, I've done the gasp and I'm like, $2,000 an ounce. I think I've got 10 kilos in my arms. And I said, oh, I couldn't possibly. I said, I really, really couldn't. I said, this is, is not right. This is how you make your money. Anyway, long story short, I went home with a rock about 1 kilo, and the colour of my chrysoprase was probably about the same colour as this frog here, if not a bit greener. So I am waffling a bit, obviously. Sounds like I'm talking myself up, but actually I'm not. It was just such an exciting day. So it's a beautiful, beautiful crystal, and it's got some amazing properties. And when we talk about the mineral aspect, what I did learn about chrysoprase at the time, obviously, that I was being given it, was that jade, the sources of jade in China, are becoming depleted. And if you know anything about the Chinese and jade, they actually love to have sculptures, of the Buddha or Kuan Yin or whatever out of the jade. So because those sources were becoming depleted, they were actually going for the Australian chrysoprase. Now, the other thing too to bear in mind is that the mine site that I'm talking about that was in West Australia, I believe was mined out quite some years ago. I did a bit of a Google check and I saw that, it's no longer available. That mine has now closed. So obviously, to be able to get a piece of chrysoprase for the average person is a real blessing. You can still get it, by the way. I'm going to talk about buying tips in a little while because it's still available, not necessarily from the mine site, of course, not at all from the mine site that I got mine from. But if you are lucky enough to get some, and the genuine article, it's considered to be a stone of the emotions and the heart. That's kind of the big label about it. So from an overview perspective, and I will go into this in more detail, it's, I would say, I've got my list back to front here in front of you, okay? When we talk about the properties that the chrysoprase can help with, very much I would put trauma and PTSD at the top and healing the broken heart, okay? Because the colour just in itself is one that relates to even phobias, actually, because it's associated with the higher heart chakra. So it's very much to do with love and healing. divine love, unconditional love, this kind of thing. So if you've got a broken heart, it's said to be able to heal that. It's supposed to support good emotional and psychological well-being, and it actually does have environmental attributes as well. So I'm going to get into those shortly and speak to them more specifically, but right now let's take a look at the zodiac links. So as you see here, with the zodiac connections or associations, it's believed to be linked to Gemini and Aquarius more so than the other zodiac star signs. Now, from my perspective, I don't think it matters what your star sign is. The only thing that I can think of with this is that Gemini and Aquarius, they both can become overthinkers, and perhaps that can lead to them overthinking and becoming oversensitive. And so therefore the Chrysoprase is going to help them to balance their thoughts, or to at least align their thoughts with loving thoughts. And that would include self-loving and less critical type thoughts. Because I think if you're a Gemini or an Aquarius, and if you're honest with yourself, you'll actually recognize that quite often the thoughts that you have, probably more so than other people, can be judgmental and negative and critical. But when you are in a position of self-mastery, you're able to handle that and to get that in control and at least balance it out. Now, when I talk about judgment and critical, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're judgmental of other people. Sometimes, of course, we all are, at different times. But the reality is that if you can restructure those thoughts, then it's going to be better, if you can make your thoughts more kind to yourself as well. To put this into perspective, so this is why we can all benefit from Chrysoprase, right? If you have tendencies of going like, oh, I'm so stupid, I can't believe I did that, and we will commonly hear those kind of comments in conversation. Chrysoprase would be a case of trying to restructure that thought to, no, you're not stupid, you just were uninformed, or no, you're growing, you're learning to master your impulse control, that kind of things, So there becomes a more forgiving and tolerant speech to self as well. So anyway, look, getting back to it, we can all benefit from Chrysoprase. It doesn't matter what star sign you are, but Geminis and Aquarius are said to particularly benefit from Chrysoprase. So let's talk about the mineral information, bearing in mind that I am not a geologist. I'm just an amateur lover of crystals, and so I do a bit of research. Now, what I did know before I started this is, and of course doing these videos actually expands my own knowledge and understanding of a subject. Sometimes I struggle, but anyway, when it comes to Chrysoprase, I was already aware that it's called Australian Jade, at least the stuff that we see in Australia, and of course this is what I've interacted with. And just to be clear here as well, with this piece of Chrysoprase that you see on this slide, I believe this part was sourced from Queensland. Don't quote me on it. And I would imagine the frog on the rock was sourced from Western Australia. But anyway, from a mineral perspective, Chrysoprase is said to be part of the quartz family. It's often referred to as a chalcedony, and a chalcedony can obviously be in a range of colours. It's not always going to be green. So my understanding and my learning through this was that actually you can get Australian jade in different colours. It's not always green. Just the ones that I've been exposed to are, but they are even more rare than the green Chrysoprase. So that's probably why I haven't seen them. I also didn't know that there are other names for Chrysoprase, such as, but they're reflective of the depth of the colour. So if we're talking about green Chrysoprase, because sometimes it's quite light and other times it's got a greater depth of the green. So it's got a couple of names that reflect the colour hues, if you like. Fancy light, fancy, so comma, fancy light, comma, fancy, fancy intense, fancy deep, and fancy dark. Now that was new information to me, just so you know. So in what we call, or I call the raw state, but it's actually a crystal in the rough, all right? What we're looking at here is the crystal in the rough in the state before it's polished. So its luster is said to be a bit greasy or waxy when you touch it. Now, I wouldn't call it greasy, okay? From my perspective, it does feel a little bit waxy, because when you initially touch it, there's, where we make the links with our mind that, if we touch a candle, we just know that if we put our fingernail in, we're going to draw a line down that it's going to turn white. Well, it feels like that when you're touching chrysoprase, but of course it's a rock, it's hard. And so if you did try and scratch it with your fingernail, it's not going to happen, okay? You can't do it because it's a rock, it's not a candle, but it has that waxy sensation to it. Now, it can also be said to be a bit glassy because, as you saw with the frog, when it's polished, it's got a very glassy and reflective quality to it. Now, what else can I tell you? Okay. Yeah, generally speaking, the colour is apple green. Actually, I should have referred to the hardness. It is 6.5 to a 7, so that's why it's got a relative level of hardness, but it still can actually be damaged, all right? Now, it's not just Australia that it's found in. You can see here that it's found in other areas, even Tanzania, which is interesting. And they will just call it chrysoprase, obviously, not Australian jade. The reason I gave you the fancy names is because if you decided that you want to educate and inform yourself a bit better about chrysoprase, or you decided that you want to buy it, it's helpful to know the other names so that when you start looking, you're going to find what it is that you're looking for. And not everybody, if they know it by a name, they're not always going to try and sell that crystal or rock by the name that you know it by. So, for instance, when I first heard of chrysoprase, I didn't know it was Australian jade. I found out it was Australian jade when I went to buy some, actually at a crystal shop, and it was there. I thought, that's not Australian jade. I was like, this is chrysoprase. I know I've got it sitting on my counter at home. And they said it's called Australian jade. And then, of course, once we start looking into it more, we find that it's got other names as well. So if I was looking for it now, let's say I wanted to buy some chrysoprase, I would Google chrysoprase. I might not see what I'm looking for. I might see some really poor stuff, or I might see some really expensive stuff. So then I might Google for Australian jade. And then if I didn't find what I was looking for, I would start Googling fancy chrysoprase or fancy light, things like that, so that I increase my options. Another thing I found interesting in the course of doing the research for this video was that apparently chrysoprase and emerald are quite often confused. And the more I increase my knowledge on crystals that we're buying, the more I understand how easy it is to confuse and mix up one crystal with another, because they come in different shades, whether it's an A grade compared to a, 5th grade product or whatever, it just becomes quite difficult. So what would I say? Look, I wouldn't have thought it was possible to mix up chrysoprase with emerald, but apparently, I would put it like this, apparently I'm open to correction here. If you're a geologist or whatever, please do feel to put in your comments. My thoughts run to that it would probably be high-grade chrysoprase that is confused with low-grade emerald. I might be wrong with this. And the other thing is that from a mineral structure, because what I saw was sometimes it can be very difficult to tell them apart. But if you were to do a mineral test on them, chrysoprase's colour is influenced by nickel, whereas emerald, what's emerald coloured with? I can't remember. Emerald's colour anyway is influenced because of a different mineral structure. Anyway, moving on from this, because I am absolutely no expert. So obviously, when it comes to buying tips, as always, the first one that is up there is when you're going to buy, if it's online, make sure that you get the dimensions, you get the weight, you know the size, you know how heavy it's going to be. The weight is going to inform you. Sometimes they're pretty clever with the way they display a crystal in a photograph, and it looks much bigger than it is, which is why you will often get, I consider it to be a reputable seller, will hold the crystals in their hand to give you a bit of an idea. But of course, if you've got, one of the tricks I have seen actually is perhaps a little Asian lady with a tiny little hand holds some crystals, and the crystals look massive in her hand. But if you've got, say, a man who's got hand the size of a small shovel, they look like a bunch of pebbles in his hand. So, even this is not a reliable means of assessing whether or not you're having a wise purchase, shall we say. And so this is why it's like, ask the dimensions, ask for the weight of what it is that you're purchasing, and then pay attention to the feedback and reviews. Are they a reputable seller? Do they have good feedback? Where is the item located? For instance, I'm going to talk about taurolite, or I don't even really know how to pronounce that. The image on the right-hand side, I will talk about that in a moment, but I probably should have checked how to pronounce it. I'm going to call it taurolite, okay? That's found in Zimbabwe. So the bottom line is, if I was to retail this, if I was doing retailing, I would not go to the US or Russia to buy that product. I would want to buy it direct from Zimbabwe, because by the time it's gone from Zimbabwe to anywhere else in the world, you've got the freight charges that are added on, and then everything gets marked up. So pay attention to the source, know the retailer, where the retailer is living and selling from, and where the item has been sourced, because you're going to be able to buy it cheaper. If it's out of its natural environment, shall we say, there will be somewhere local to where it's been found that you can actually buy it at a much better rate. Now, the reason why I put that image in is because this is quite often confused with Chrysoprase. Now, before I go on to these images here and talking about them, I just want to remind you that when you are doing your buying online, make sure you check out what the freight charges are, okay? Because it could push your little tumbled stone up to being the most hugely expensive item that you've ever purchased in your life. What else was I going to say? But when it comes, going back to Chrysoprase specifically, as you see here, I put up different images, and this is because I would like you to get your eye attuned to what Chrysoprase might look like. And we've got a number of different representations here. You've seen the colour of the frog, you've seen the colour of the Queensland slice. You're now looking at another slice on the left-hand side. Well, actually, that's not a slice. That's basically... I'm talking about the image on the top left. Okay, that one's from Russia. That's Chrysoprase from Russia, apparently. And you can see this has got a much darker green to it than the ones that I showed you previously. And then when we look at the central tumbled stones, I've got to say I'm really not impressed by them. I'm not impressed by either of them, to be honest. And in fact, if I had to buy some tumbles, this is just me, each to their own. To me, the ones in the hand, they actually don't look like Chrysoprase to me. They even look like pretty poor quality Amazonite, I would say. But they're being sold as Chrysoprase, just so that you know. If I was going to buy poor quality tumbles of Chrysoprase, I would probably go with the lighter green ones with the brown flecks in it. And that's because it actually is true to colour, and because it's got transparency. Now, speaking about transparency, you see the image on the top right. That's another slice of Chrysoprase. But you can see that where the image on the left really looks quite dark, that's because it's in the rough. With Chrysoprase, when they talk about transparency, they're not all as transparent as the image on the right. They can even be more transparent, but they can also be less transparent. But that kind of gives you an idea, I hope, of what you're looking for when you're going for Chrysoprase. Now, the other interesting thing, and I didn't know this, so this was part of my learning today, I've seen a lot of crystals come out of Madagascar, and I usually consider them to be up there as some of the most beautiful crystals in the world. Now, the image on the left-hand side down the bottom is a piece of Madagascan Chrysoprase. And you can see that's totally different looking. I mean, this is genuine, by the way. If I was looking online and I hadn't done this video, I would actually think that's fake or been mislabeled, but that is legitimate, apparently. Now, what was I going to say? I would have thought... I'm just checking my notes. Okay, I would have actually thought that the image of the Madagascan Chrysoprase was actually serpentine, because I've actually bought some serpentine that has come out of Madagascar, but it's, once again, it's not like that. It is, but it isn't, so I can see that there might be confusion. I will eventually do a video on serpentine as well, which is another beautiful crystal for the heart. Okay, so let's talk about taurolite. If you do a Google, you will see that it's similar in appearance to chrysoprase, but it's also very different. They are both apparently chalcedony, but when it comes to chrysoprase, it actually doesn't go to the same emerald green depths that this taurolite does. I realise as I say this that the Russian chrysoprase looks fairly emerald, but the Zimbabwean one is going to go far more darker, and this is why it's got the different name. Allow me to correct myself, it's not just because of the shade, it's actually because of the mineral makeup. Now, as I said to you before, when we were talking about the mineral content, chrysoprase, the green, is influenced by nickel in the ore source, shall we say, or in the earth where the chrysoprase develops. Whereas when it comes to taurolite, it's apparently made green, not from nickel, it's made green because there's chrome in the earth where it develops, grows, I can't think of the word, where it evolves. But either way, it's a very beautiful specimen, and I would be happy to be able to have that as part of my collection, and I'm sure you would be as well. It just is a case of knowing what you're buying, it's not chrysoprase. If you see it marketed as chrysoprase, it's absolutely not. And your eye should be able to tell the difference, not just from the fact that the colour is different, similar but different, but also because it's got white bands and white flecks through it. Okay, so hopefully that's clear for you. So you may as well say, a lot of the time, just as a duty of care and trying to make sure I give you guys the best information that I can, and at least be reasonably reliable, with the big disclaimer that, conduct your own research. Absolutely. Don't take on board everything I say as gospel when it comes to this kind of information. This is just to point you in the direction where you can carry out your own explorations. Anyway, where I'm going with this is I didn't know that chrysoprase can be faked until I was doing these videos. And of course it can be, really. So what I did was I got a source online, geology.com, and they had an image of these beautiful, beautiful little cabochons, I think that's how you pronounce the word, that I've got in the central image. And of course I've put fake on there. Thank God, that they let us know that. They are not genuine chrysoprase. They are apparently light grey chalcedony that has been dyed to be green. So they appear to be either fine jade or chrysoprase. So they will be marketed or sold by unethical retailers as this high-end product, which they're actually not. It's a pretty drab thing without the dyeing. Now, I just want to point out here too that I've met a lot of people that actually have no objection to buying products or having dyed products as well. They're fine about it, but it's important that they be labelled correctly. And this is what the author of this article was saying, was that they gave us some tips, basically. Hang on, let me check my notes. What did he say? He said the way they get around it, some of these sneaky retailers, is that they will label it. So you'll be searching, say, on a platform, an online marketing thing for chrysoprase, for example, and it's going to pull up these earrings, these fake ones, I'll just call them, and the fakes will come up, okay? But then because the retailers have got it there as a label, when you read the description, the ethical retailers will refer to it as dyed green, if they're ethical, okay? Or colour enhanced. They'll use certain terms there. So what he said that he did was he then decided to do his own research, and he would contact a lot of the vendors on eBay and Etsy and things like that, where it wasn't said that these products were fake. and it wasn't included in the description either. So he would then message them and say, are these beads or crystals dyed? And he said invariably the response was yes. Okay. Now, what he also said was that a lot of the time they will dye the chalcedony, but many other times too they will use agate. Okay. And as I said, look, some people are fine about that, because they're just after the colour healing and they just like that product. So it's not an issue. It's about being honest. What else can I say? Basically, just that when it comes to the genuine chrysoprase, there is no perfect coloration, shall we say. And this is what they say. So if you were going to buy a beaded necklace, say of chrysoprase, right, all those beads would not be identical in colour. They would not all be equally as transparent as the other. There will be slight variations. Now, what else can I say? It's just, it's quite difficult sometimes. I guess just basically, and you can't see this actually in these little images, and this is why I would encourage you to do your own Googling. But when it comes to natural chrysoprase, it is rarely in this perfect state. If you look at the ring on the left-hand side, you'll see that there's some natural little flaws within that green. Now, some people, if you think that chrysoprase is this beautiful fake stuff in the middle, you might be repelled by the ring stone texture and colour and all of that kind of stuff. But at the same time, somebody like me will look at that and think that's beautiful, that's perfect, that's genuine. It's in its original state really, as much as the fact that it's been polished, it's as close to it. And then if you were to look at, actually I should have been clear then. When I was talking about the ring, I meant the one on the left, okay? On the right-hand side, we have another ring, which is oval. Now, if you were able to enlarge this particular image, you will see that that particular ring, and you probably can't on this video, do your own research, okay? You will see that it's got some black dots and flecks in there. They're not super obvious, but they are still there. And you will get these natural flaws within chrysoprase. But the other thing I wanted to point out, the reason why I use this particular image is of the right-hand side ring, is because it has been displayed over a piece of glass with a light behind it so that you can actually see that there is that translucency to it, or transparency as well, which is part of what makes chrysoprase as beautiful as it is. So I'll try and race through this now because I've done a lot of waffling on this video particularly, and I apologize for that, but I hope that the information I'm giving you is interesting. Anyway, when it comes to the spiritual metaphysical benefits of chrysoprase, it's got so many of them. Okay, so I've already said that it's a stone of love, and it most definitely is. And love is vital if we're seeking to transform our lives. And by this, I mean opening up the heart chakra to forgiveness, to have this level of self-love and understanding that, we, as much as anybody else, is worthy of divine love and consideration. So when we can do that, this is when we're able to access things like our psychic gifts, to be able to tap into the celestial realms, shall we say. So within this, chrysoprase carries this calming stuff. Now, I'm going to be talking about the emotional stuff on the other slide, but when we talk about, I think for the spiritual and metaphysical, the stuff that you're interested in is this capacity to be able to link in with the divine, and that can be the entities of the earth, nature, goddess, the nature kingdom, the earth kingdom. What else? The psychic gifts, of course, is all your clairs, which is part of being able to communicate with the higher realms, to raise above the limitations that we put on ourselves, because limitation is a human concept. It's actually a process of the mind. Now, when we can rise above these limitations, then we're able to access the higher energies. Now, the other part to being able to access these higher vibration energies is to be able to balance the masculine and feminine polarities within. and that's the equilibrium. Now, I realise that when we talk about male and female and masculine and feminine, it's become very political. So within the context of energy and spirituality, we're talking about balancing the aspects of self that are the provide and protect is what I meant. Provide and protection stuff, where we're able to meet our own base needs, we're able to feel safe, take care of ourselves, as well as nurture ourselves and to be kind towards each other, because historically feminine energy is that nurturing, the mothering type stuff, and masculine energy is the traditional stereotypes of the father parent, if you like. So there is that as well. And of course, as you access your psychic gifts, that means you're able to get into things like divination. So Chrysoprase is actually recommended for a pendulum use. Okay. What else? Look, you wouldn't think that a greenstone is one that is one of grounding, but the nature of chrysoprase is. And I would actually take it a step further, which I will when we talk about the emotional stuff of being able to ground and connect and stay in the present moment. It does also assist to be able to enter a state of grace and happiness, feeling more of it. And it's said to provide a sense of continuity as we move forward into the unknown. So I guess we could say chrysoprase helps us to live in the present within uncertainty, which is perfect for right now. Now, one of the other things I haven't put on here is that it's actually used as a treatment for what they call sick building syndrome. Now, if you don't know what sick building is, this is where basically somebody gets ill and it has that domino effect. That's one aspect of sick building syndrome. I suppose in the times of COVID and where they're always talking about viruses and stuff like that, if you had sick building syndrome, it would be where one person has the symptoms and then everybody else goes out like a domino. So if you had some chrysoprase, it would be great and perfect to put it in your office environment or even in your home as part of balancing any health issues. As always, when it comes to the physical healing attributes, my slides, my videos come through with a big disclaimer, okay? Do not disengage from your professional treatment, experts, whatever, your doctor. You're going to see those experts for a reason. But what you could do is wear your crystal or use your crystal in conjunction with your current treating plan. And I've got to also put a disclaimer here because there are some recommendations for the use of chrysoprase in ways that I have never actually known of or heard of it being used. And so I'm really outlining here, this is what I've heard, not what I've seen or observed. Okay, so it's supposed to support people who have AIDS or HIV. Now, I'm not sure in what way that is. That might be to help alleviate symptoms or whatever, but it's not going to do any harm if people with these conditions actually wear chrysoprase. And this is the same with people that are experiencing fertility or infertility issues or problems with their reproductive organs. If you struggle to be physically flexible, you could wear it as well. Who knows? It might improve. I'd be interested in your thoughts. And if you've got any issues with your body organs, such as the liver, the gallbladder, the pancreas, it's supposed to support cleansing and detox. One thing I find interesting, and I think perhaps miscarriage should be on the emotional page as opposed to the physical one, but a miscarriage is a physical experience. So for those people that are struggling and grieving a miscarriage, it is said to support emotional comfort after the fact, okay? It's also recommended for those ladies that are pregnant, experiencing nightmares. I've mentioned fertility. For guys, it's supposed to be able to assist with the prostate gland and any issues that might be around their reproductive organs. And also it's supposed to help for minimising or reducing, if not removing, nightmares if people are struggling with that. And if you've got kids, you might want to put a piece in their bedroom or under their pillow. I'm interested in this one. I don't know how they came to a conclusion with this, but STDs, it's supposed to be effective for. Let me know your thoughts. You don't have to reveal But if you have used it to treat a physical condition, let us know if it worked for you or how it went for you. I had an experience, I'm going to go down a waffle. Let's just say I realized the other day that, I might as well just be out there. I had no symptoms associated with menopause, and menopause happened before I even knew that I was going through it. And I wore garnet, red garnet, for years. And I just happened to see the other day that red garnet is supposed to be beneficial to women that are going through menopause. So I thought, well, how interesting. I can't say factually or with any credibility that garnet removed these issues for me, but how coincidental that I was wearing it daily as a pendant and I didn't even know until after the fact. Maybe it does work. Now, if you're struggling with any of these issues, they tend to be emotional or psychological. It's to do with thoughts and feelings. So I'm not going to run through all of them here, just these are the recommendations. I find it interesting that it's apparently really good for addressing people that struggle with things like jealousy and judgment. So I can understand exactly why it's recommended for people with anxiety or fear or phobias. And yeah, anyway, moving on from this, I'll let you look at that in your leisure. So, from a chakra perspective, it's actually very much associated with the heart chakra and the higher heart. And if you know anything about your chakras, you will understand, and actually color healing, you will understand that the color emerald green, or these really deep greens, is about unconditional love or love of others and forgiveness towards others, because the fact of the matter is that as we go through our life, we're always hurt by people and we will hurt other people too. Invariably, it seems to be part of life. Despite best intentions, sometimes our actions are hurtful to people as well. But when we talk about the heart chakra and the color emerald green, this is the recognizing that, very few people actually consciously and maliciously will go out of their way to try and hurt people. It can feel like it does. And even if they did, this Chrysoprase is about going, you know what? Okay, that's their life, their journey. They're going to be accountable for their choices at the divine time. And I can choose to live my life now carrying all this pain, or I can let it go and move on positively. So the emerald green and the Chrysoprase will assist with that. When it comes to the higher heart chakra, obviously this graphic that I've designed, I've been meaning to update. Technology has played a part in my delays because it just takes me so long to do anything. But I will eventually do it. But either way, when it comes to the higher heart chakra, this is where people who experience panic attacks, and they will know that. Okay, this is why I say it's associated with phobias. If somebody has a panic attack, they don't get pain so much down in the heart area. It's kind of between the top of their cleavage, if they're a woman, in between their boobs. It's between that and the throat chakra. They might get some pain in there. It might go down a little bit towards to the cleavage, but it's usually situated about there. So that's also the center of trauma as well. So this is why I say, look, Chrysoprase is actually related to the heart and the higher heart. Now, if you had trauma, you probably would want to go for the Chrysoprase that is more limey green. If you were struggling with forgiveness of people that you feel have betrayed you, then you might want to go for a Chrysoprase that has got that darker green association. And sometimes what happens when I'm doing these videos with this very slow internet connection is I can actually record an entire slide and then it removes itself. Such is life. Moving on. Okay, I've got a question mark here on this particular slide as far as uses go. I'm not sure if Chrysoprase is actually suitable to be used as an elixir if people were going to make them where they just drop the crystal into a glass of water, which is how some people will do it. It might be toxic. I don't know. You might be able to answer that, or we can do a Google ourselves at a later date. But certainly you could use Chrysoprase for jewelry items. You've seen this here. But I have to be honest, because it's not the hardest crystal in the world. It's certainly hardy. but I don't think that I would wear it as either a ring or as bracelets, because I think I'm pretty hard on jewelry, and because I'm very much, when it comes to activity, I'm very much hands-on. And I will always look, I find myself, if I'm about to do something dirty, like go out and do the gardening, or something that might require, unusual use of my arms or hands, it could be lifting a heavy box or something like that, I might look at my bracelets if I've got them on and think like, I better be careful here. Maybe I should take them off. And then I think, no, it's all right. I'll be fine. Okay. And then I end up damaging things. So somebody like me would not be good with a chrysoprase ring or bracelet. I'd probably forget and put my hands in the dishwashing water or something like that. But if you're very mindful of your jewelry, you could actually use it. But obviously you would take care not to bang the crystal anywhere. Somebody like me would be better off using it as a pendant or as a pendulum, or as in the case with my large rock that I was given. That was environmental. I used to have it on a sideboard, basically so that I could look at it, and actually, realistically, what I was doing in my ignorance was actually experiencing the ambient energy of chrysoprase, which brings calm and peace into the environment. Now, of course, some people will always use any crystal, because you can use any crystal, and that includes chrysoprase, as part of a grid. But anyway, if you know the answer to whether or not you can use chrysoprase as an elixir, let me know. I think there's different ways of creating elixirs where you don't have to drop the crystal directly into the water, and I might explore that myself and perhaps do a video to that end too. So there's a couple of ways to read chrysoprase as an oracle messenger, okay? And just in case you haven't watched any of my previous videos, I have a lucky dip. When I'm providing services to people, I always have bowls of crystals, tumbles around chips or whatever, and I just ask a person to close their eyes, put their hand into the dip and pull out a crystal and show it to me. So if they pulled out a piece of chrysoprase, I would be reminding them that they, as much as anybody else, is worthy of divine love, and that this crystal is reminding them to believe it. If they've got these critical self-thoughts, to let them go. Let it go, release it, reshape it. And it's also, it can be read as being predictive, in that they're coming into this time frame where they can expect to make this connection to the higher realms, if you like. And if pregnancy was on the radar and a concern for them, if there was fertility issues or health issues, then I would say this is a reminder that they can overcome it, because everything about chrysoprase is about truth, honesty, integrity, rising above problems. It's a very uplifting crystal. I hope you can't hear my little doggy in the background with his squeaky toy. So if you're talking about your crystal care from a non-metaphysical perspective, the best way to actually clean it is actually to use warm water, not hot, just tepid water, using a very mild soap. If it's in a jewelry setting, of course, use a soft toothbrush if you need to around the silver, not over the top of the crystal. I mean, if you're using a really soft toothbrush anyway, it's not going to damage the actual gem or the polish anyway. But you would then do that, rinse it off, and then polish it with a soft cloth. Use a soft cloth to dry it down, and then you put it away. You store it, and you store it separately to other crystals, because you want to make sure they don't rub against each other, because that can actually cause a couple of scratches of chrysoprase itself, because it is a chalcedony. Now, if you were looking to energize and clear metaphysically, as always, I recommend selenite, because I absolutely love it. It's easy, it's low maintenance, it doesn't take a lot of work or effort on my part, and I like things that are basically time management, good, effective. So selenite's a great option. But if you like sage or doing incense, you could certainly clean your chrysoprase that way. And any actually of the mainstream ways, I don't think that anything can damage the chrysoprase, even if you were to leave it in salt. Actually, yes, there is one that I wouldn't recommend that you do, and that's to actually leave your chrysoprase in the sunlight. You certainly in Australia, and I repeat this all the time, this is because we have a very harsh sunlight, and so it can fade the crystal. Anything that's got a colour, it can strip it. So we would be cautious here in Australia and go for ambient sunlight. And also, if you're like me and you do like to leave them out overnight under a full moon, just be aware the birds might actually try and pinch it. I think that's all I can add. Do you have any suggestions? I'm going to give up talking about this because the dog's going berserk with that toy. I really shouldn't refer to him as a dog because actually he's a delightful little boy and his name is Toby, and he brings me such pleasure and joy. He's actually very happy at the moment because I've just given him a big feed, and so he's all excited and needs to go outside. So that being said, I invite you to leave any of your thoughts or comments here. I'm going to get straight into downloading this because it will probably take me about 2 hours to download and 2 hours to upload. And I'm trying to get this up today, being Thursday. I'm recording it on the day of upload. So for now, my friends, I'm just going to say love you, leave you, wish you a best day, blessed day, best day, wonderful week. Take care. If you leave a comment, I'll catch you on the Sunday yarning video. Take care for now. Bye-bye. Love you. Bye.